PriceLabs breakthrough fall release. We ran this version of this webinar yesterday and went really well. We had a ton of great questions. So please, please, please use the Q&A if you have questions. We're going to be going through some data and some really, really interesting stuff. But if any of it's not clear or if you need clarification, please, please, please just let us know. Yes, and if you're just joining us, again, this is being recorded. So if you need to hop off, I know that's a question that we get a lot. We will be, again, sending this out in an email, and it'll also be posted on our YouTube channel. We do have a lot to cover today, though. Our team has been working on this for probably about 2 years now, testing it for, probably, a year or 6 months. It's been really, really great seeing some of our clients switching over to the new tools. It's been really, really cool to see the feedback that we've got. We do have a poll that is on your screen. If y'all could please fill that out. Just gives us a little bit more of an idea of sort of who you are, so we can sort of cater the rest of our conversation to your needs. So do please fill that out. It should be popping up on your screen. And I will ask, because this is such a large webinar, we've already have about 500 people joining us, which is incredible. Please, I know you probably will want to follow along as we're going through the product. Sometimes when we have these really large webinars, if everybody sort of is clicking on the same thing at the same time, it can really slow things down and sort of make the this event be a little more awkward than it normally would be. Awesome. So my name is Becca. I'm based out of Charleston, South Carolina. I've been with PriceLabs for about 2 years now. I lead the US solutions team. I've got a really great team with us today. Maybe Richie, you want to start by introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. My name's Richie. I'm one of the co-founders at PriceLabs, and I look after go-to-market at PriceLabs. That means how we support you, how do we market to you, and how do we actually help you on your day-to-day. Anurag?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Anurag, based out of Chicago. I one of the co-founders as well, along with Richie and Sana. I do data science and product. So a lot about looking at what kind of data do we gather, how do we gather it, how do we make use of it to come up with price recommendations. You have an amazing data science team and product team. So yeah, those are the two things we look for. I look after every feedback that you send about, what can improve in the product, or what can improve in the algorithm. It all trickles down to us. So keep it coming.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, my name is Pedro. I'm in the data science team. So I work with making sure that we have the right data and also making sure that we're using the data in the right way, right? So the algorithm and all that stuff. So yeah. Cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Richie, were you going to share your screen?
I am going to,
Sorry.
yes. So sorry. No, my bad.
I am working off of one screen today also. I'm a little bit, okay, beautiful. Awesome. So I think we're going to kick it off with a word from our founders.
Sure. I can go on here, guys. So PriceLabs, depending on, I've not looked at the poll results. I'm not sure how long some of you have been using PriceLabs, but PriceLabs' journey started 9 years ago. But a major part of the current release that we're going to focus on today is something that we started working on 2 years ago, right? So this is not like something that we thought of yesterday or 3 months ago, right? This is something that's been in motion from 2 years ago. At the time, we were a team of 30 odd folks. Now we are nearing about 150 folks. The market had gone through a lot of shifts. There was COVID, and then there was a vacation rental boom. And then last year, there were sound around possible recession. Earlier this year, we heard Airbnb bust, and there's been a lot of changes in the market, and in the process we've also collected enormous amounts of data. But during this whole 2-year phase, we realized that the way we price properties, and in fact, any other pricing solution that did, right, was doing a good job, but there could be something better. We had released our first algorithm in 2014, and Anurag will touch on how we made improvements on it, right? But we knew that we needed to completely rehaul and create something better for needs of how dynamic the market had become in the last 3 years. And also, to be frank, we had collected a lot more data. Technology world had evolved, so we just had to kind of be the phoenix, right? Burn ourselves and be reborn in some ways, right? So over the 2 years, we spent enormous amount of time like just overhauling everything from data collection to storage to computation models to algorithms to everything that you can think of, and plus a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger that went around within, all with positive things, right? But having said that, with that, what we are very, very excited to introduce today to you, what we think is a paradigm shift in how vacation rentals, short-term rentals, and in some way accommodation rentals price. The new algorithm, Hyperlocal Pulse, which we're going to get into, it might get a little math heavy, but bear with us. One, we are excited to talk about this, but also we feel like part of our role as software providers is, while we do provide software, but also to help you learn and to educate a little bit as to how do we go about doing things, right? Having said that, the new algorithm we think is a revolutionary change, gives about 26% on average RevPAR lift between not using anything versus using the new algorithm, which is also a market change compared to what our previous algorithms did, right? Secret sauce, Pedro, Anurag, a lot of our top of the line engineering and data science team, right? We've been consistently working on this. And as we took this live, by the way, we will gradually make this live something that we'll also cover during the webinar. But as we took this live, we also announced several other data intelligence analytics upgrades, right? Market-driven, last-minute far-out changes, seasonality customization, something that we'll touch on again as we go through today. But all in all, with the intention to saying, how can we enhance the pricing precision that you guys get from PriceLabs, and also how can we reduce the manual work that you need to do and make it as automated as possible. Now, there's always going to be some level of manual work because all of us have risk. Our risk profiles are different, our controls are different, our limitations are different. So there's going to be some level of changes and tweaks that you need to make in PriceLabs, right? So that brings us to the next big part of our release, right? Because we wanted to make this super easy, we introduced something that we'll also touch on to make these workflows easier, which is smart presets. And that will make, hopefully, your life a lot easy in going through and using PriceLabs and tweaking PriceLabs. Now, PriceLabs has been a preferred pricing solution for hosts and property managers alike around the world, and we're very, very thankful for that. We have a little over 280,000 properties that we price every day, 150 people who are here to support you every day. So whether you're new to PriceLabs or you've been looking at PriceLabs for a while, we do hope that you stick around for this release. It's going to take another, I think, maybe an hour or maybe a little bit longer. But if you want to learn more, if you stick around here, we will talk about it. If not, also we will have this video recorded. We will also have this converted into, we have blogs for this. So there is a lot that we will have here for you to understand and take this on. But if I was to summarize why we're doing this, we want to make the product more intelligent, using the latest technology available, all the data that we have, all the top of the line engineering that we can do, so that we can give you that enhanced pricing precision. We can reduce the amount of time that you're spending on pricing. And also, we want to give you some access to swift, easy to access metrics and make recognitions, give you access to sorry for that, but give you access to Swift critical metrics, right? And then finally, one place where we are also heading to that we briefly touch on today is while we serve short-term rentals and vacation rentals really, really well, we are starting to head towards midterm as well. And you will see parts of it today. There is more that we will cover in coming months. And then also, we'd be looking at multi-unit rentals. We do already do multi-unit rentals, but you'll see that from us more as well. But to sum up, very, very excited about this release. Very excited about having about 600 people on this webinar right now listening in. And I want to pass on the baton to Anurag to talk about the release and then also walk us through into HLP.
All right. Thank you so much, Richie. If we can move to the next slide. Richie already mentioned this, but the big part of this release is our new algorithm, which we are calling hyperlocal pulse. And there is a reason to give it that name, and I want to get into that over the next few slides. But if we can move on to the next slide, sorry, next slide, please, Richie or Becca. Cool. Before we get into like what exactly it is, one of the important things I wanted to cover was why HLP. Richie gave a little bit of a flavor, but PriceLabs started in 2014, right? Almost, I would say 9 years back. And our first algorithm, we came up with a machine learning algorithm, launched it in beta in Chicago. I think it was in August 2014. Learned a lot from our early adopters, rolled out a version for the entire world. And then over the next 2 years, we got a ton of feedback. And a lot of that feedback was just an algorithm isn't enough. Everybody has different needs. The product needs to be such that people can make the algorithm work for them. So it should not be, you turn on a switch, you get these prices. People need to be able to say what my last minute discount needs to be, what my weekend prices need to be. Everybody has different preferences. For a big holiday, you might want to say, I want to override what PriceLabs is suggesting, and things like that. So 2016 is when we rolled out that version and actually came out of beta. And then over the next, I would say 6-7 years, we have been making a ton of incremental improvements, improvement in how we do day of week pricing, improvements in how we do holiday pricing, event detection, seasonality, pacing, everywhere. So like everywhere you've been trying to find, okay, where is the gap? How can we address it, right? These were all iterative improvements. So we had a working algorithm and we said, okay, we are getting feedback about, and we are ourselves seeing that, okay, sometimes when markets slow down, for example, during COVID, the prices were not coming down fast enough. So like, how can we address this? We introduced pacing for that reason, right? But one of the things that became clearer to us as we kept gathering more and more data, more and more high quality data, is there is, now we had significantly more volume of data and quality of data. And you see some of that data if you use our market dashboards or if you go to the neighborhood data tab, right? That we can actually, like Richie was saying, redesign our entire algorithm so that it just works a lot better and is a lot more transparent. And I want to touch upon both of those points very quickly. If you can move to the next slide. Cool. So the big difference between the old algorithm and the new algorithm is in that table. And the old algorithm used, there were some things that we identified from our very first rollout in 2014 that events, holidays, day of week patterns need to be hyperlocal. And by hyperlocal, I mean, if your property is in the downtown business district versus if it is in a more touristy part versus if it is on the beach, all within the same city. We are not even changing which city you're in. We are just changing the micro neighborhoods that you're in. The day of week patterns can change. So for example, if you are in the business district, you do get a lot of demand from business travelers as well, which means your weekends are not that low in demand. Whereas if you're in a more touristy part, it's possible that you are getting a lot more weekend heavy demand, right? Same thing goes with events. Like when there is a large event, depending on where that event is being held, some part of the city might see more demand bump compared to another part of the city. So these things were always hyper local for us. The seasonality and pacing, these are the broader trends, like how is July in this region usually? How is it doing compared to last year? These we were doing at a cluster level. And by cluster level, I mean, it can be a city as a whole. If it is a large city, it can be 2 clusters within or 3 clusters, depends on how large the city it is. In the example on the right, for example, that's a map of St. Augustine, and then you see that you can build almost 3 clusters in there, and we would do seasonality for each of these separately. What's changed is that we are now doing all of this. Everything that is a part of our algorithm now is very, very localized. So even for seasonality, we are saying you don't even have to go to cluster level, because if you're somewhere in between, which cluster do you fall in? You're neither this nor that. It's actually a continuum. We want to make sure that wherever your property is, and this matters a lot, if you were in a large market already, then you were already, the algorithm was already doing very well. But if you were a little bit in a niche market, then the new algorithm performs a lot better. The other big thing, even if you were already in a large market, is 5 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom, they would all get very similar seasonality, because seasonality and pacing used to be very computationally intensive processes. So it's not something we could click, like every time you click save and refresh, it's not something we could run live. That's the big change that has come up. Over the years, computational models have improved, computational power has improved overall. And then the way we structure and store our data has basically enabled us to say, every time you click save and refresh, we go and fetch very localized data for similar properties and say, what should the seasonality be here? All of that essentially improves our pricing. We go to the next slide. Right, so as I said, all of those changes in making sure everything is hyper-local means the seasonality and pacing are a lot more responsive. They are based on properties that are very close to you, that are similar to you. Day-of-week fluctuations are a lot better. Event and holiday pricing, even though they already were based on hyperlocal data, in the new model, because we were completely revamping things, we were able to improve those as well. Instead of there being 3 separate models that we would tie together, there is one unified model that just works a lot better. And what that means is, one, like Richie mentioned, better revenue results. And this is especially true if you were in a very set and forget mode. But if you were heavily involved in also saying, hey, PriceLabs is doing this, I want to adjust prices up or down based on what I know. What we have seen over the last 3 or 4 months of doing beta testing with some of our customers has been they've had to add manual interventions a lot less often, which is a great thing to have, right? Like if the system does most of the work for you, you're not having to spend more time on this and do something else instead. I spoke about transparency a little bit, and I wanted to highlight this. Everything that goes into determining your price recommendations now is actually data that you can see in your account. So I don't know if everybody in PriceLabs has been to the neighborhood data tab. If there is so much important data in that tab about not just how your competitors are pricing and how your prices are in comparison, but also the occupancy chart shows you a ton of data about, how is the future looking right now? Like, is New Year's Eve for this year booked 20% or 30%? But that in itself isn't enough. It also gives you context of, at this time last year, was it 30% or 20%? So if this year you're at 20% and last year you were at 30%, you can tell already that New Year's Eve is pacing slower. Demand has softened. And it also tells you, like, how did it eventually book? So like there's a lot of data packed in there. You hear about Airbnb bust and these kinds of things, and they might talk about state level data or national data. What you can do in neighborhood data today is actually see for your very hyper local comp set for your neighborhood, is that true or not? What is happening? How is demand shaping up? So all of this data that you can see in front of you is what is powering our algorithm, which is a huge boost on transparency, right? Like you're able to see everything. Now, how that data gets used is something I'm going to hand over to Pedro to go over. I think that's the next slide.
Hi, so I will start talking about a little bit in a little bit more detail about how the algorithm works, right? But before I get to prices, I need to talk about occupancy forecast, which is an important building block that we have to come up with the price recommendations in this algorithm. So in the first chart here, you can see in dark green what the occupancy, what's our forecasted occupancy for the dates, right? And I'm starting here at the end, because if you look at the dotted line, that's one of the important pieces of information that we consider, which is what was the occupancy, the final occupancy for the same dates last year. And so you can see that there's a difference there. And that's because just by knowing last year's occupancy, that's not enough information to talk about what's going to be the occupancy this year, because things change, right? It's not going to be the exact same occupancy. Some things happened last year that won't happen this year, and we want to make sure that we account for those differences as well. And how we do that is with something that Anurag talked about, which is this notion in the second chart, where you show in red what is the occupancy for dates in the future. And then you compare it with the same dates during the same period last year. And so by looking at those differences, you can kind of make those modifications to the green line up top, and that gives you a forecasted occupancy. So we can talk with the second slide, or next slide. Cool. So occupancy is important, but what we really care about is prices, right? So to get this relationship between occupancy and prices, we need this curve here, which is called the price elasticity curve. And what it tells us is what is the probability of booking for a specific date at any price point, right? And what I mean is that this specific curve here only applies to one date in your calendar. Every single date in your calendar will have a slightly different probability of booking depending on prices. And we do take that into account. So the very basic interpretation of this plot is that if you increase prices, you should expect to get less bookings, which is very straightforward, right? But I'll go a little bit more into this in the next slide, where I will talk about revenue, right? So what we really care about is revenue. And now I overlaid the revenue curve, which is based on the probability of booking in black. And so let's talk now about this curve. So if we start from the left side again, we're at zero price, and your occupancy is very high, so you get zero revenue, right? But as we walk along that line between prices 0 and 500, you can see that the revenue will increase gradually up until it hits a peak, right around $160, $170 here, and then it starts decreasing again, right? And the decrease is because there is a certain point where you increase your prices, but you get fewer bookings and that results in less revenue, right? And so what we're looking for here is this sweet spot, which is the peak of the black line, which is the maximum revenue. And so this is what our algorithm is optimizing for. All right, so next slide. And then finally, like I said, this is all done on this hyperlocal level for every single date in your calendar, right? So what we do is we gather the data that Anurag talked about, this hyperlocal data. With this data, we come up with a demand forecast. With this demand forecast, we come up with a price elasticity model, which connects demand with prices, and the optimized rate is really the final product. And so every single date in your calendar, we do that on a very hyperlocal level, and we have here how we do it 540 days because that's our default pricing window in PriceLabs. But yeah, that's kind of the algorithm in a nutshell. And then I'll go back to Anurag.
All right, Pedro touched upon this already as to why do we need to do this every single day, repeat the entire process every single day, which if you've been a host for a long time, you probably know. Markets change over time. The forecast that we come up with for any given date can evolve. So I wanted to share an example here This is looking at April 14th, 2023, which is a few months back in Phoenix, Arizona. And for any given date, we start forecasting its demand 18 months out, right, by default. And if you do need a 2-year window, 720 days, we can do that as well. But by default, we start forecasting any date 540 days out. So what this chart is showing is back in July and August of 2022, what kind of demand forecast were we projecting for this particular date? And every month, I've shown monthly breakpoints to make this chart a little simpler, but every day, as we gather more data about what's happening in the future, we are updating the forecast. What you'll see is starting somewhere in August, the forecast actually started dipping down. This is something that you would expect to see if the markets are slowing down compared to the previous years, where you see a slowdown in bookings and you say, okay, last year was booked, let's say 60%. As time goes by, we are seeing fewer bookings than last year, so we are going to tone down the forecast. And then for that particular date, Taylor Swift's November announcement comes about, her Eras tour. And all of a sudden, we start seeing that, okay, now bookings are actually beginning to pick up. As soon as we see 1, 2, 3 bookings in the market, in the entire market, we know that, okay, something is happening here that is making people book more than normal. And we go ahead and bump up your forecast. And as a result, bump up the prices too. And now this is the automated process. We do also have a revenue management team that is looking out for large events, large outlier events that are happening in any market. We do have a product update on that front as well, which Richie will cover potentially. So every day, the point I want to highlight is every day we are looking at fresh forward-looking data that comes in and updating our forecast. So our forecast is not based on just history. It's not just based on future. It's marrying the two to figure out, okay, what used to happen and how is it happening? How is the demand happening in comparison? That gives us the final forecast. Now, the big question that everybody probably has is, okay, there is a new algorithm. How do I get to start using that algorithm? So if we can go to the next slide. One of the things that we are rolling out after like later this week is a tool that helps our customers not just migrate over to the new algorithm, but also very closely monitor how the prices are going to be different compared to the old algorithm. The reason we are doing this, and we are not saying, we are not turning on a switch for everybody and telling everybody, hey, you're on the new algorithm, is because we want to closely monitor, because you might have created settings in your PriceLabs account to make sure that PriceLabs is working for you. With the new algorithm, we think you'll have to use fewer of those settings. The biggest one, for example, biggest two that we have seen a lot of customers, early adopters turn off is day of week adjustments. And if you were using seasonal base prices, even that. So we are providing a tool for you to evaluate what can be turned off, what should be turned off, so that when you switch over, it's not disrupting how you work, right? Now, in parallel, our team is also phasing this out to make sure that customers who have minimal disruption can be switched over easily. And then as we gather more feedback, we'll enable it for more and more customers. If you are very curious about switching over, do send us an email at support@pricelabs.co, and we can look at moving you ahead in the queue as well. We can go to the next slide. I think now it's Richie and Becca, on to you.
Becca, I think you're on mute. Cool. Already, Becca, unless you have figured out a way to unmute yourself, I can go on.
Go ahead.
No, go for you.
Okay. So I think that we are going to dive into, so like Anurag said, we've got, while HLP is like the big thing that we've been working on for some time, our team has also been busy creating a probably upwards of almost 30 different new improvements that we've added to this tool or to our tools. So we want to highlight just 4 additional tools that should make y'all's lives a little bit easier. Richie, do you want to? There we go. Perfect. So we're going to start off with smart presets. So you probably have logged into your account recently and noticed that things are a little bit different. There's going to be a pop-up that says, hey, let us know a little bit more about your properties. We're doing this because a lot of hosts, property managers, one thing that's really great about our tool was that there's a ton of different customizations. There's a ton of different options for you to really say, these are my goals. I want to customize the algorithm essentially. One caveat of that is that sometimes it's a little bit complicated, especially if you're just getting started. Seeing all those options and understanding which ones you should potentially use can be a little bit overwhelming. So we created smart presets to make your lives a little bit easier. And I can actually share my screen and sort of hop into the product quickly if we have time. Cool. Let's see. There we go. Perfect. So let me just clear out some of these boxes. Okay, hopefully everybody can see my screen. Okay, I'm in this account. So to access smart presets, after I don't have the pop-up, we'll show you a picture of that in a little bit. But if you go to review prices and click edit, you will now see a different option here. And I apologize for this, this bar here. You shouldn't see that on your account. You're going to see smart presets. Now, right now, this account has said, okay, I'm a short-term rental and I have used dynamic pricing before. I'm more comfortable with dynamic pricing than maybe somebody who has never used a tool like PriceLabs in the past. So we're now curating a set of customizations that we've seen to help other short-term rental operators that are used to using dynamic pricing, help them be successful in their use of PriceLabs. We have all these great little tips that are customized for each of these use cases. So right now we have short-term rentals selected, but say I'm an operator that maybe has midterm rentals or apartment hotels. I can go into my settings, even if maybe I've only done short-term rentals in the past, maybe I've, opened a new business venture. I'm going to go into my advanced settings and then you'll see a couple different options. You can select midterm rentals, multi-units, and you can change this answer here as well, whether you've used dynamic pricing or not. And all of this is just going to give you more options. Now, all of these options are available to you. I'm going to go back to my main page here. Now, we're not getting rid of any options. Everything that you are used to seeing in your account is going to be hidden sort of under this more customizations area. You can always pin this right here. So you can still access all of these same customizations that you've always had. We're just trying to make this a little bit more accessible, a little bit easier to understand, and just putting a couple of those key customizations that you want to potentially want to use right here. Now, by all means, please do join us for our advanced trainings webinar, our advanced settings webinar, because we will go through each of these different customizations. You might not necessarily need to use them. Just because they are on this page doesn't mean that you need to make changes, but these are changes that you potentially might want to make. So again, we run that webinar, at least in the US, on Thursdays. So if you have questions about what any of these customizations do, if you should use them, if you shouldn't use them, do join us for that. Okay, and then Richie, are you going to do the next one? Sorry.
Sure, I can. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to pick over, I'm going to take over from Becca here, and we're going to talk about the next thing, which is performance metrics. Performance metrics, essentially, if you're familiar with PriceLabs, you have seen that we, on your dashboard, used to show 3 occupancy metrics, sometimes also referred to as listing health, right? You could see the next 7-day, next 30-day, next 90-day by default, and you could tweak those occupancy metrics where you could so you could see your pricing in or your occupancy in comparison to the market, right? We've taken that and we've put it a little bit on steroids so that you can tweak it to be able to see the way you want to see your metrics. I'm going to start sharing my own PriceLabs account as well, and I guess you can see it, right? And what you'd see, let me actually remove these for now and go back to the default view of this, which is typically when you'd come into PriceLabs if you've been using PriceLabs, you would have seen, and let this load in a second here, you would have typically seen, I've removed some columns, but you would have typically seen like occupancy next 15 days, next 30 days, next 90 days. And if you put your mouse on any of these, now mine's a dummy account, but if you put your mouse on any of these, it would show you your listings occupancy and it would show you markets occupancy, right? And this was helpful for you to make decisions on, am I trending behind the market or am I trending ahead of the market, right? But what we also heard from a lot of folks is that they want to see several other metrics, right? Or maybe the occupancy metric is not necessarily what they want to see, or maybe they want to see historical metrics, right? So we've taken this, we've taken a bunch of feedback and we've kind of added a whole slew of metrics here, right? So what you'd see on your PriceLabs dashboard, in the top right, you'd see add metrics. If you click that, you'd see the typical metrics that you see, but you can click on any of these and now you'd see you could pick from any of this, right? One of the good ones that I really like to see is minimum price hitting in next 30 days, right? This is where you're kind of restricting PriceLabs algorithm by having some kind of a minimum price, and we are not able to price below it. In this example, I have put a dummy high price, and so you would see that I am hitting my minimum price quite often once this page loads. And so you would see I am hitting 27% of my days. I'm running at 0% occupancy and 27%. So nearly 1/3 of my days are hitting minimum price. And if I had a minimum price nudge here, it will also tell me like, hey, you need to go and think about reducing your minimum price because like you're hitting too many days with minimum price and you're sitting at very low occupancies, right? The other interesting ones that you can then look at is also, I can look at my revenue, again, past 30 days, future 30 days, whatever I wanted to see. Interesting one, last book date. When was the last time I was booked, right? Sometimes maybe your listings are not available. Sometimes they're blocked. Sometimes they have received a bad rating and you're not fully sure. So you can see last book date. And so there are a bunch of different metrics that you can play with and add to your dashboard. If you had like, you could also look at, for example, now you can also start to look at a combination, right? Like I'm looking at a combination. I am sitting at next 30 days at 0%. I have 27% of my listing hitting 20% of the 27% of the days hitting minimum price. And let me also add, for example, last book date, right? And I've also added a last book date here. And you'll see that pop up, and it'll show you because this is a dummy data. It'll show you like the listing was booked couple of months back, right? So July 2023 was the last time this was booked, right? And so all of these point to, hey, something's wrong, and I need to go in and do something, right? What you'd also see is, for example, by the way, up top here, row column visibility, you can choose to hide or show all of these columns. I'm going to bring back my base price column here. And what you'd see is PriceLabs is recommending me to drop down the base price because naturally I am not booking at this price and I need to bring down my price, right? Now, all of this is testing. So we'll test at 287 and maybe we don't book at 287. So PriceLabs will again tell us to drop the base price down. There are a ton of the basic webinar that we run, or we have some videos on YouTube to talk about how to think about your base price. So you may want to on this property, I'd want to relook at my base price if it was not a dummy property. But hopefully you'd find this helpful. Again, you'd get this at add metrics. You can add all kinds of metrics here so that you can very easily see and understand your business quickly. Because the real estate on the screen is limited, you can of course choose to show or hide which columns do you really want to see. Finally, this is primarily a host webinar, so I don't expect you to have a lot of properties, but if you did have a lot of properties, if you can use the filter option where I can go in and also, like previously, you can just use the listing info, but now you can also say, hey, I want to look at all the listings that had a last book date more than 30 days, right? Last book days was like beyond 30 days, right? So it'll show me just that listing, right? Or actually it'll show me all, I guess, because I have no bookings on any of these. Hopefully that's helpful. Do give this a shot. We'll be doing more webinars around how to use each of these as we get into more depth on each of these. But in today's webinar, we do want to cover these in summary. So I'm going to pass this on back to Becca to talk about the booking calendar and I think also custom comp set. Becca, if you can take that.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Awesome. Okay, cool. So hopefully everybody can see my screen now. So again, I'm going to head back into this pricing calendar here. Now, something really cool that we've done recently is just giving you more visibility of what's going on in your listing. So you'll see, this is sort of on two different parts here. You'll see we've added a bunch of these little indicators. So you can now see when you have check-ins. It might be a little bit hard if my screen is small, but dates that you have check-ins, you'll see a little key indicator. If dates are unbookable, maybe you have a 2-night minimum and it's only a 1-night gap, you're going to see a little, I don't know that we have any on this calendar. Oh, here's one right here. So this is a 2-night minimum. For some reason, this is unbookable. So you can quickly come in here and reference and see what's going on with your bookings, with your actual calendar, without having to maybe go in between your PMS or your connected account. Really, really useful. Any book dates are going to be that sort of circle, like it almost looks like a full moon, I suppose. If you have multi-units, you'll see sort of like a pie graph almost showing you how many units are occupied there. So really, really useful. Just again, giving you a little bit more visibility when you're in your calendar trying to make pricing decisions or minimum stay decisions, just trying to surface that a little bit for you. Now, the second thing that we've added booking data to is neighborhood data. And if you aren't using this tool, you definitely should. And we've just made it a lot more powerful. So if I come in here, it'll take a second to load potentially. Just being on Zoom and on hotel Wi-Fi. But you'll notice, so you can kind of see it as it's loading here. On this future pricing chart, you'll see that you can now add your upcoming bookings as well as your last year bookings. So as you're looking at how your prices are changing throughout the year and what your prices look like for upcoming dates, you can actually compare what your current pricing is against the prices that you were booked at last year. Now, do keep in mind, depending on the PMS or connected account that you're using, sometimes we're showing here, I'll add it so you can actually see here. So in green, I'm going to hide the market data because it's making it a little bit hard to see. And I'm going to zoom in to the next couple months. So you'll see as I've clicked here, your upcoming bookings, you're going to see these green lines appear that are showing you the average rate for the bookings that are on your calendar. You can also compare that to these blue lines, which are your bookings from last year. So you can quickly see, okay, are my prices in line with where they should be? Are my bookings in line with where they should be? Am I maybe priced too high compared to where I've been in the past, priced too low? Really, really useful information here. Now, something else, if you are using this neighborhood data section, keep in mind, so I'm going to add the market data back here. So what we're showing you is the comp set that we're using to price your listing. So again, that hyper-local comp set, similar size listings around you, typically up to about 350, unless you're in a very rural area without a lot of listings around you. Now, we cast this sort of wider net to really understand these, all the things that are going on in the market, all the different trends and demand triggers that we're seeing. But I saw a couple of you saying, you know, I've got a pool, I have a hot tub, I have a really unique listing, like how can I take this into account? And that's going to be our market dashboards custom comp sets. So this is something that we've actually had for a while, but I'll say it wasn't the most user-friendly thing in the past, and we've made some leaps and bounds here. So okay, awesome. I've got this market dashboard pulled up here. Now, so if I scroll down, you'll see this comp set area. So comp set is essentially, you can hand pick the listings that you want to see the data for. Now, of course, the pricing that we're creating will always be off of the hyper-local comp set that we've curated, but you can now pull in data from listings that you've handpicked into both the dynamic pricing neighborhood dashboard tool as well as portfolio analytics. And it's really, really easy now to actually create these comp sets. First, of course, I always like to mention that you can always use this little lasso tool, and maybe I just want to see these lakefront properties, for example. And then I'll come down here. Before you had to, of course, it's going to load a little bit. You'll click Create Comp Set, and we've got all these filters up top. Again, not the easiest thing to use, so we've created this new filter listings option. I can say, let me look at 2 and maybe 3 bedrooms with 2 bathrooms. So we'll say 2 bathrooms, maximum guests of maybe 10. And as I'm making all these adjustments, you'll see the number of listings that match the criteria is decreasing. So the number of listings that I'm going to include in my comp set went from I think almost 5,000 down to about 600. And I can continue. I can say, I only want to look at, really nice listings with good ratings, a decent number of reviews, all of this good stuff. And it's going to continue to drop and sort of create a list of, competitors that I can actually maybe say are more like mine. Is it beachfront? Is there a hot tub? Do they have a EV charger or a pool? Maybe I want to say, yes, I only want to look at properties with pools. That drops me down to about 105 listings in this market. I'll click apply. And then I click select all here. You can go through and individually click on each Airbnb link to see maybe aesthetically, are they using like a really old phone to take, all their shots of their house, or are they using a professional photographer, interior designer, that sort of a thing. Once you're happy with your selections, you name your comp set and click generate. Super simple. You can then hop back into, so I've got too many tabs open. I'm going to hop back into, here we go. So here, again, the data that we're seeing right now is nearby listings. So again, that comp set that we sort of curated for you, you can now select market dashboard. I can say, okay, I've got this dashboard that I've created. And if I scroll all the way down, there's going to be a bunch of comp sets that, again, I've handpicked, a couple that PriceLabs has sort of curated for you, and you just click apply. The other place where you can use this that's really cool is going to be in our pacing reports. And if you haven't joined us for our portfolio analytics webinars, we run that at the beginning of each month, along with our market dashboards webinar. So if you haven't explored that tool, please join us for one of those webinars, or you can find them on our YouTube channel. So these are our pacing reports. I won't get too deep into this, but what's really neat, especially if you are a host, if you don't have a ton of properties, if you're looking at some of this data, it might look a little bit messy, right? So if you only have, less than 10 properties, your occupancy is going to be really varied across dates, just because you don't have a ton of data in your portfolio. Same thing if you are like a new host or a new property manager, you might not have data from last year. So this is a really, really great place to look if you don't have sort of a ton of your own data. I can click here, and again, I'm going to select my market dashboard. I'm going to select the comp set that I've created. I'm just going to do all for now. And it's going to overlay, again, that data to sort of supplement the data that I might not have. So I can see how the market's occupancy looks, how the market's ADR, RevPAR look, and how it's pacing. So pacing, again, comparing what's on the books currently, looking forward against where we were this time last year. So as of September 20th, 2022, what did the market occupancy look like? Is it higher this year, lower this year? And then you can use those, those data points to make decisions. Maybe if the market's occupancy, this market actually looks like it's doing relatively well. And pretty much on par for last year. But if we saw that maybe December was significantly lower, the red solid line, which is the market data for this year, if we saw that was significantly lower than where we were this time last year, that might tell me, okay, maybe the market's a little bit softer. I might need to change some policies, maybe be a little bit more, lenient with my minimum stay, maybe be a little bit more aggressive with occupancy discounts, things like that. So really, really interesting stuff. Again, we've got a ton of other resources. I'd love to sort of dive in a little bit more, but I know we are actually coming up on time already. This has really gone pretty quickly. So I'm going to yield my screen back over to Richie. Who is muted.
You're muted.
Let me find the right screen to share and not end this webinar by mistake, which I was about to click. Okay, so I know that was a lot, right? That's a lot. There's a lot to go through here. I would recommend you to start with like the few things. HLP, we're going to get in touch with you to migrate. Smart presets that Becca talked about is fantastic, right? Everything else that we cover like is automatically covered in smart presets because we tell you what to do. And also when we do the migration and when we reach out to you, there'd be a migration playground kind of a setup that you can easily migrate yourself from, and you can see how your pricing will get affected between old and new. The other one, performance metrics, go in, play with it, and see that. And the other two that Becca talked about, custom comp set. I think, Becca, we should do a separate webinar on custom comp set because there's so much we can talk about. And the neighborhood data also is something that we should probably spend some time doing a separate webinar on. But there is a lot to do in neighborhood data. Go check that out. There are a lot of help articles for you to check out on that, right? Now, the challenge with this release that we're doing is that's not all. There is so much more that is going on in this release. So there are like 24 other things that have come up. The large majority of the users on this webinar are hosts or generally like smaller property managers. I think on the poll I saw a large majority had one property and mostly had less than 5 properties. So I'm going to specifically focus on a few of these, and then we're going to take some questions, close out, let our rest of the panelists go, and then Becca and I will stick around and cover some of these functionalities in depth a little bit more. Right. So market-driven last minute and far out customizations. We used to do a default on last minute and far out customizations. It was a heuristics approach. Every other pricing software does heuristics approach as far as I know. But with HLP and with everything that we're doing with data, now we can do this hyper-local market, right? We understand for your market what is the right last minute discount, what is the last like far out premium, right? Now, one caveat, we would need you to migrate to HLP in order to be able to use this as well. On the older algorithm, we would still be on that heuristics model. Also, in if you had your own setup, nothing happens to that. Enhanced minimum stay recommendations. If you have not seen our recommendation engine, if you go into your customizations, if you go to stay restrictions, you'd see like a button with a bulb icon. Click that. We tell you what is hyperlocal recommendation for your minimum stay so that you can maximize your revenues and reduce your turnovers, right? Seasonality customization. Again, as a part of this HLP, we now allow you to say, do you want your seasonality to be more aggressive, less aggressive? So how much deviation from your base price is that seasonality going to cost, right? Hotel rates, hotel comp sets, all of these, right? Market-driven seasonality, hotel rates, hotel comp sets. If you use smart presets, we will tell you like which one to select and what to do with it a little bit, right? Base price nudges, minimum price nudges. Hopefully you've seen this, and we're constantly improving them as we go along. So you'd also see now minimum price nudges in your account, and then we're making it better, and over time we'll also move these over to emails. Analysis now. Analysis forms a core part of PriceLabs. As much as we want it to be completely self-serve and sorry, not self-serve, but completely like intelligent and automated, right? Where you don't need to touch it. But I know a lot of you have your own risk limitations, your own limitations. So you may want to dive into data. And so we have a lot of analytical tools that we've made available. Comsets that Becca just touched on, pacing charts and booking charts, that's in portfolio analytics. Do attend our training on portfolio analytics. I think happens once a month. Then compare competitor calendar, it's in neighborhood data. You can literally, if you're familiar with enemy method, you can literally go in, select a few listings up to 10, and you can see how are they pricing, right? Exactly like their numbers on Airbnb. Hotel data with length of stay, you'd see this in the tab next to neighborhood data. And then events and holiday calendar, this is in beta, we'd be rolling it out. It's accessible to some, and over time we'd be rolling it out to everyone. I'm sorry, I know I'm rushing. I'm just trying to get through, take on some questions, say goodbye to our panelists, and then Becca and I will stick around. Workflows, a lot of these are generally useful if you have a lot of listings. Calendar start day, a bunch of you asked, hey, our calendars started on Sunday on PriceLabs screen, and there was a reason for that, because Friday and Saturday end up being your big days. So your calendar generally looks good when you see it like that, right? Your like the darker blue color shows on the right, and the lighter greens generally on the left. But you can now choose to change when your calendar starts. Date specific overrides, we have if you are using date specific overrides, now they can expire. There is one use case that we are solving and one use case that we will solve in future. So stick around for that. We're going to talk about that. And then a lot of these remaining, I would say, are generally accessed by larger users, but you can download all of the data from PriceLabs in a CSV. You can use smart check-in checkouts. If you're using groups, subgroups is going to be an interesting thing to look at. And then coming to data access, right? So we have all of this ton of data. We are constantly making this better. We have released something called as an STR index. It's a free to use tool on our marketing website where you can understand at a broad level in countries, in some US states, what is happening in terms of ADR, RevPAR, etc. Right? Now, you can't take revenue management decisions on this, but you can understand at a broad level how is a state or a country doing. Revenue estimator, again, another free to use tool. It's available on our marketing website. You'd see on the marketing website, you'd see resources, and under resources, you'd see revenue estimator. Revenue estimator is a free to use tool. Do note that this is meant to give you directional information. This is not meant to say you want to make your purchase decisions on this, right? It'll give you directional information, right? We are working on an enhanced version of Revenue Estimator, which we'll be releasing either later this year or early next year, which will help you get more granular into estimating revenue for certain area or certain neighborhoods, right? And then the other thing that we heard on market dashboards is 5,000. We had 1,000 and 5,000, and 5,000 was limiting. So we have released 10,000. We also know that there are questions and asks around what can we do with market dashboard plans. There's a lot of things that we're planning to do with market dashboards and restructuring them, etc. Right. So if you have ideas, suggestions, please email them to us at support@pricelabs.co, and we will consider them as we are planning our market dashboards and revamp of market dashboards. So I've ran through a ton of this. I know we have not had time to cover this. Becca and I will stick around and we will talk about some of these in a little bit more detail. But with that, Becca, back to you to see if we have any questions.
Oh, do we have questions? We've got a ton of questions. It's awesome. Just to remind everybody, this is being recorded. I know that we are sort of at time now, so if you have to hop off, thank you so much for joining us. But we will be sending a recording of this. It will be on our YouTube channel. But yeah, so we've got a bunch of questions. Probably want to start by going back to HLP. Had a good question that I saw, I think actually in the chat. I know that we already went over this. Can you define what hyperlocal is to us? And is there such thing as being too hyperlocal?
Got it. So hyperlocal to us, I think Pedro went into this a little bit, but for every property that you price with us, we look at our usual threshold is up to 350 similar sized properties that are close to you. Now, we do, like in a dense location, like if you're in a big city, you get to 350 similar sized properties within a kilometer, or sometimes even less, like depending on which city you're in. If you're in a remote location, this could be a lot larger, and that is okay. So like we by default, we go up to 15 kilometers out to say, hey, can we get enough properties? We don't, one of the reasons we expand the radius in a sparser area is if you run this with too few homes, then the data gets noisier and noisier, right? Like for statistical significance and all of those reasons, you do need a certain threshold of properties. The more you have, the better it is. There is that balance to be found between saying, okay, if I stop at 350, let's go at 1,000 properties, 2,000 properties. But that's when you start not becoming hyperlocal. Now, the flip side is, what if you become too hyperlocal, right? So for example, if in Paris you have a particular location where within half a kilometer you end up reaching the threshold, is that bad? I would argue that not necessarily, because as long as we are hitting that significant sample of 350 properties in sparser locations, 100, 150 properties, we are okay. Like if there was something happening in your neighboring neighborhood that was trickling down into your area, some of those properties will start showing those trends. Some of the properties in your block with a massive density will start showing those impacts as well, right? So when we say hyperlocal, it doesn't mean a blanket radius for every location. It means depending on the location and the density of properties in the area, the radius can adapt, which is also helpful. Like in a large city, if there is an event happening, a lot of people want to stay very close to the city. Like people are not necessarily looking to drive 5 miles to come to that event every morning, right? But if it is something that is a little more rural, a little bit in the nature, people are a little more flexible with where they stay. They don't necessarily want to stay like, right outside the gates, because, well, there isn't much right outside the gates. This is like rural parts by definition, right? So wherever there's no density, your guests are also a little more flexible in the location, and then we expand the radius. Does that help answer?
Yeah, that was super clear. Thank you. Something that we talked a little bit about yesterday, and I know you did touch on this before, but what sort of like impact have we seen from those who have switched to HLP or when we were doing A/B testing?
Yeah, so on average, with the new algorithm, we are seeing that when somebody was not using PriceLabs to started using PriceLabs, we are seeing about a 26% lift on average. So this is average, right? And there are a few important things to note here. Like one, we measured this in the first 3 months of somebody starting with PriceLabs. That number will evolve, and we'll continue studying it. Compared to the old algorithm, this represents about a 9% bump, again, on average. The range can be different. The range can be different for each customer and how heavily involved they were in managing PriceLabs, right? So for some customers, for example, large customers with multiple revenue managers on their team, whose full-time job is to manage the company's revenue, right? They would use PriceLabs and they would heavily monitor everything and fine-tune everything. They would essentially look at the same kind of data that our new algorithm is looking at to say, okay, how can we get more out of it? So in those cases, when they switched over, they didn't necessarily see a big revenue bump, but what they saw was huge time savings. They are not having to do manual adjustments. Instead, they are now able to look at things more strategically, right? And then there are customers who necessarily were in a more set and forget mode where they weren't necessarily coming in and spending a lot of time to study and make adjustments. In those cases, there is very little time saving to be had. But that's where the major revenue benefit comes in, because the new algorithm just prices better.
Awesome. Perfect. And the question of the hour, how do we get access to this new algorithm? Who's already on it? Can we switch soon?
Yeah. Yes. So first of all, you can log into your account, and where Richie was showing performance metrics, right next to it, there is a button that says row or column visibility. There is a column there that you can check to say for each listing, show me the algorithm version. So if you want to know if I'm already on the new algorithm or not, that's something you can do. Now, anytime the underlying algorithm changes in a pricing system, we do want our customers to have continuity. Like, what we don't want to say is, we flipped over the switch for you and suddenly your prices change a lot, and that's not something we want to happen, right? So for that reason, the way we are approaching this is we are looking at all of our customers and seeing who will not see a big impact, and we are migrating them. We are emailing them and informing them that they'll be moving over, and we are doing it for them. So in the next couple of weeks, you might get one of those emails that says, hey, look, our data science team has evaluated your account, and you can be safely migrated, and we are doing it for you. There are also customers who might need to say, for example, because we are doing better on seasonality, doing better on day of week adjustments, that they might need to turn off some of their settings. And what we are doing is we are creating this playground. I think one of the slides had it, and I saw a question of like, hey, where is the screen? That screen will be available later this week. But even there, we are saying, okay, depending on how much impact a customer is going to have, we are rolling it out in phases. Of course, if you email us and tell us like, hey, I can't wait to get on it, we are not going to hold it back from you. Like, we will say, here's the playground, play around with it, figure out what customizations you might need to turn off. In some cases, you might need to say, hey, look, the algorithm is automatically incorporating that markets this year are slower. So I don't need, I had lowered my base price, but I don't need to lower my base price anymore. I can move it back up. So there are, the playground will show you these suggestions of to say, what do we suggest? And then you can look at your prices with the new algorithm and with the old algorithm and say, okay, I'm comfortable moving over now. So if you have reached out to us, we will expedite it. If not, we have a schedule that we'll go by to say who's getting migrated each week, essentially. If you are just creating an account, and I think if you have created an account in the last month or so, because there was no transition involved, you are already on the new algorithm. And again, you can go to your dashboard and check that box and see which version you're on. One important point, if you have multiple properties, you can control the migration for each property. So it's not like, I have 20 properties and I turn off a switch and everything gets migrated. If you want, you can do that, but you can also go property by property and say like, okay, I want to do this in a more controlled way. That would be up to you.
Perfect. And it looks like we have a couple of midterm rental operators in the house. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what this means for them? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, so there are a few things that have already been rolled out, and there are a few things that we will roll out. We have already started doing research on that front, and some of it will roll out. What has already been rolled out is there are a lot of settings in PriceLabs that can be tuned to better serve midterm rentals. When I talk about midterm rentals, I generally want to segregate the two types. There are the pure midterm rentals, which is essentially the city or the county said, you cannot do anything shorter than 30 nights anymore. In this case, you're pure. Like, you can't, even if you wanted to, you cannot take a 2-night stay, right? Now, if that is the case, we already have a smart preset in there, which says, hey, look, if you're not going to take a 2-night stay, the daily fluctuation in the prices doesn't matter to you anymore. You can go ahead and smoothen the prices. So there is a smoothing setting available to say, you know what, set my prices at a week basis, don't necessarily need daily fluctuation. It also suggests things like, if you go to our minimum night recommendations, you can set rules to say, okay, I want a 30-night thing by default, but one of the big one of the big risks with midterm rentals is if you get 2 midterm bookings, 30 nights each, and there are 25 days sitting in between. You can't do anything about those 25 days now, other than getting one of your other stays to extend your stay, right? So some of the settings that we have actually can help you avoid those 25 night gaps. So you can go in there and do those kind of things. So like we have an article, we have the smart reset. So like all of this information is there. Now the algorithm front, our algorithm HLT is now very much driven by the comp set you have chosen, right? That we have chosen. One of the things that we have been looking into and we will introduce in due course is for you to be able to say, my comp set should be other midterm properties, right? And that way, the demand trends and the occupancy trends and the price trends of other midterm rentals is what gets used for your forecast. Instead of using all of the short-term rental demand, we also use we only use the midterm demand. The other segment is the flex rentals, where you're doing midterm rentals by choice. And if you're doing that, then there is a lot more that can be done. In that case, pricing wise, we still recommend that you continue using short-term rental pricing, but you can do a couple of things to incentivize longer bookings. One which a lot of our customers use is outside of 30 nights or outside of 15 nights, you basically say, I don't want a short booking. Like, I really prefer taking a 30-night booking as much as possible. And as the date approaches, if you're still unbooked, then you say, last minute, I'm okay with a 2-night stay, because that 2-night stay will get over very quickly. I'll still have a free calendar to take the preferred longer bookings later on. What you don't want is to take a 2-night booking for December 15th, which means anybody who's wanting to book 1 month or 2 month stay around December just cannot do anything anymore. Now you're forced to do short-term rentals in December, right? So for flex rentals, a lot more can be done. Pricing wise, we still recommend sticking to nightly pricing instead of weekly or monthly, but add add weekly and monthly discounts, use minimum stay settings that will incentivize more longer bookings than shorter bookings.
Perfect, thank you. So we are about 15 minutes over time now. One last question, and you've hinted at this. I know we just did all this work for this big release, but can you give us a hint of maybe what's on the horizon?
Yeah, we talked about the midterm stuff a little bit. There is Richie spoke a little bit about the revenue estimator product that we are working on as well. The free version is on our website at hello.pricelabs.co. And then if you go into resources, you'll find that one. But we are also working on a lot more powerful tool where you can handpick which comp sets you want to use to estimate your revenue for a particular region and things like that, right? There is a lot more to be done on the whole visualization side, like what kind of data that we show you. Base price help is something that we are constantly working on to improve our recommendations there, to improving the nudges, like Richie said, where when you log in, what kind of, depending on how you have been performing, incorporating more information and saying, how can we improve that? Richie, am I missing anything?
No, there's there are a bunch of things coming out, but all with the standard tenet, like I said, of we want to add intelligence so that we reduce the cognitive load. But at the same time, we want to make data more accessible so that if you want to do analysis, you can quickly do that, right? And then we also want to add automations. So the automations are different from intelligence, right? Intelligence is where we show you the pricing, but automations is our kind of customizations, right? So we also want to add automations so that it is easy for you to so that you can do stuff automatically, or rather the machine does stuff automatically and it saves you time rather than doing it every day, right? So those are the three big things. There's also, of course, we're going to work on integrations. If you're using softwares, are we integrated with them, not integrated with them, right? And we're going to do a bunch of work around that. And then always we're constantly trying to improve our look and feel of the product, right? Of course, it sometimes between building exciting new intelligent features and look and feel of the product, sometimes exciting new features take precedence, right? But that's the final thing that we'd be balancing against.
I did want to add a little bit on the controls and customizations part. And there was a question around this as well. So last year, we rolled out something where you can create minimum stay automation based on seasons, right? So like whenever you're for each season, you can say 7 nights is my default, but last minute I want to reduce to 4 nights during summer on a beach maybe. But in fall, I want to start at 4 nights and reduce it to 3 nights last minute and then 2 nights as well because demand is lower and things like that. We are also planning on doing that for price controls as well, right? So one of the examples that came up was orphan night bookings, right? So like during high season, because I know most things get booked, I might not want to discount a 2-night gap because I know it will get booked. There is plenty of demand. But during off season, if there's a 2-night gap, the chances of it getting booked are much lower. So I might want a big discount there, right? So how can I automate those kinds of things? Today, you can still in some ways do it, just that at the change of season, you go and change your settings. But how can we make it automated so you don't have to come and change your settings, right? That's one. The second broader goal, just like HLP, we started researching this about 2 years back, right? We are always looking at what other data exists out there in the short-term rental industry, in the wider hospitality industry, that will help us come up with the next generation or next set of improvements on the algorithm. Like it's a never-ending journey on that front. Like I used to work at United Airlines doing the pricing systems. They had existed for like 30, 40 years. And the same story there, like you were always trying to find how can I improve this algorithm from its current state. So that's going to continue.
Some really exciting stuff. I guess, Richie, do we want to like launch another poll to see if we're going to stay a while, or we're just gonna stick around for more questions?
Feel like I was thinking this webinar, like we'd let the panelists go 20 minutes earlier, and but I'm not sure. Like let's do this, right? Do people want to stick around for? I'm quickly going to launch a poll as soon as I figure out how to do that.
Okay.
No, I know this. Cool. But Becca, in the meanwhile, while I'm doing this poll, can you at least touch on the market last minute and far out, and I'll put together the poll in a minute.
Yeah, of course. Here, let me share my screen again. So this is something that's really, really neat. Now, if you are on the old algorithm, you will not be able to see this in your account yet. But once you are on the new algorithm, sorry, let me make sure that I'm sharing the right thing. This is an improvement sort of in addition to the actual HLP itself that is really, really cool. Awesome. So hopefully everybody can see that. Beautiful. So I'm going to go to review prices and take a look at our customizations. Now, under smart presets, we've got a couple of options. These used to be under general. So you should normally see last minute prices. Before we were hiding far out price customizations, but now we're making that available to everybody to customize. But what's even cooler is that our defaults have changed. So the defaults that we used to use or are currently using for the old algorithm were calculated to generally work in any market. So the thought process here, and I actually did see a couple of questions about that. Why are we discounting last minute? Thought process is as dates get closer, your opportunity to book is actually decreasing, and we're working with an expiring inventory. So if today does not book and it passes, we can't sell that date anymore. So we're trying to increase maybe visibility and also bookability by lowering your prices gradually over the next 2 weeks or so. So that was the default. Now, if you are on HLP, the default has changed. It's actually going to be based on your hyper-local market, and it's going to be recalculated every single day. So why is this important? If you're in a seasonal market, so I'm based out of Charleston, our high season is in the summer, my booking window is going to look a lot different. Booking patterns coming into our high season are going to be very, very different than those when we're going into maybe our low season in the fall. You might want to have a more aggressive last minute discount if people are, booking like not very last minute, right? So things are going to change with the market now. So both the last minute prices and the far out prices are based on the booking patterns that we're seeing for today, for every single day. So it will sort of look, instead of the normal default that you'll see, you'll actually still be able to see exactly what we're doing. So in this case, I believe this is based in Vermont. Today, we're calculating a discount starting 28 days out, topping off at a 29% discount. So it's going to be a gradual discount. If you were to look at today, you would see a 29% discount. And then as you get further out on your calendar, you're going to see that decreasing. So I'll pop in here. You can hover over any date and it'll show you our handy little tooltip here. Under price customizations, you'll see last minute price factor minus 29%. As I go further out on the calendar, you're going to see it drop 26%, 24%. And this is going to be specific to your property, specific to your market, which is really, really neat. And we're doing the same thing with far out prices. On the other hand, if you're looking really far out on your calendar, maybe Taylor Swift has not announced her new tour dates yet, or maybe there just aren't really any booking signals that are saying, okay, this is a really high demand date, this is a low demand date. So something that we've always done is raise your prices further out on your calendar. If you're using the old algorithm, it starts 30 days from today, and it increases about 1% per week up until 7 months, and then it's a flat 20% premium on all of your dates. So if you're looking at your calendar, typically you will see your prices further out being a little bit higher than you expect, and that's actually by design. So now, again, that was a general, default that should work for all markets, but now we're actually customizing it again specifically to your hyper local market, those similar size listings, and it's changing potentially every single day.
All righty. Thank you so much for that, Becca.
Yes.
So again, this feature is only available once you have moved to hyperlocal Pulse, or if you have recently started using hyperlocal Pulse, or you started using PriceLabs, you're already on hyperlocal Pulse. I'm going to roll out a quick ending survey here, folks. If you can help us rate on that survey, we'd be extremely, extremely thankful. It'll help us understand what did you think about all the features? How did you think about the presentation? And then also, I think we're trying to understand if we're sticking around for the rest of this. You'd see the survey. I think you'd see the survey pop up. Sorry. Trying to figure this out. I see some responses coming in. So I think people are filling in. I see 250 odd people still on the webinar, which is great, because we are 26 minutes over time. We are at 1.5 hours. Once again, everyone who's on this webinar, we couldn't be more humbled. Thank you so much for being here, for like listening into us except Becca, the rest of us dorks and nerds, for listening to all of us for the last 1 hour 30 minutes. So really, really appreciate this, and thank you for all the feedback. Once again, all of this survey is like a multi-select kind of thing, right? So if you have feedback, if you can send it to us, like a more detailed feedback, send it to us at support@pricelabs.co. We look at all the support. We really believe in making everyone who's using PriceLabs successful, and so we'll strive for that. Once again, please do fill out the survey. It's probably going to take you a few seconds, but it'll help us understand how and what you're thinking about this. Cool. Becca, I am at, and I think generally where the survey direction is going, right? I think while we have a bunch of folks who are interested in doing it just now, I think where the survey is going, we'd schedule another call. So folks who want to listen into the remaining features that we have, we are going to schedule another call for this. Please do fill in that survey. I still see about 60% of still 200 odd people on the webinar, and about 60% participation. So we'd be extremely thankful. This really helps us improve how we communicate back to you. And once again, if you have feedback that's more detailed or it's more subjective, please do email us. We take all criticism with positive spirit, and it'll only help us become better. So whether that's positive feedback, which will be heartwarming, but also any constructive feedback, we'd really take it in, and we'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I think Becca, I think you're going to do the closing for us.
Sure. I do just want to say, y'all, please do reach out to us with questions, but know that a lot of people are reaching out to our support team. They're working really hard, but we might be a little bit delayed today getting back to you just because of the volume of people that were on this webinar, and I'm sure had questions and feedback. So please do keep that in mind. Thank you. I always want to say thank you, Anurag, Richie, Pedro, RP, honestly, the whole team. I'm so proud of everybody. It's been really, really incredible to be on this side of the table and just seeing the whole company kind of come together and working so hard over the past couple of years, but even in the past month trying to push this out. It's been really, really cool. Big thanks to our support team as well. It looks like a couple of them have dropped off, but they answered 155 questions throughout this webinar. So that's really, really cool. And of course, thank you all to everybody that joined us and has continued to use PriceLabs. We wouldn't be here without you. You make our product better, and we really, really appreciate it. So please join us again. We'll be doing another webinar pretty soon, it sounds like. And have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.